So I've been getting a lot of calls since these two hurricanes in Florida hit, Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, about water people are finding that are coming up through the floor. The floors are wet after these two storms and after it rained. So they're perplexed, confused. I want to know, is this covered by insurance? So because I've gotten so many calls on this very issue, I'm going to make a video and we're going to talk about this and find out what you can do, the plan of action, and what the insurance company's probably going to take as far as a position with this type of claim. My name is Mike Keeler. I'm a licensed public adjuster here in the state of Florida. So it's common that people have no idea what the cause of this, sometimes where it's coming from, most of the time. So most homeowners actually accidentally find that the floors are wet. And they'll, depending on where the area is at, most of the time it's in areas where there is no water source, a bedroom window, front room, living room window, things of that nature. And so as I mentioned, they become confused as to where it's coming from and what caused the issue. But really, it comes down to just a few things, and we'll talk about that. So there really usually is only three causes. Your windows, the exterior cracks on the outside of the house, okay? You're looking at the outside here, either side of this house. Or in third, which is actually probably the least likely, although this is probably the first option that people think of, the roof. Okay? It's especially least likely option of the three if you have no water stains on the ceiling. Because essentially what you're going to try and think of causing the damage of the floor is that the water is coming down the walls. And again, that seems very unlikely if you don't have water stains on the ceilings. Obviously, if you have maybe aluminum soffits and your soffits are blown out from a hurricane, that could happen that way. But if you don't have leaks on the top of your ceilings anywhere, on your ceilings, then obviously it seems a little bit more difficult that the roof is actually the cause of everything. So one thing you want to do is possibly utilize a water mitigation company or a leak detection company. Both can actually find the leak. If you plan on having drywall removed and mold remediated, if mold is present, then you should call the water mitigation company. All right. If you use a water mitigation company, just know that a claim is going to have to be open unless you agree to them on some type of cash work basis, right? So they do the work, you pay them on a cash basis. So really the question that should be first on your mind after you find out about these damages is it going to be covered? So this becomes tricky. And there's three different buckets where we have to look at. So number one, let's talk about the windows. So the insurance company, if you're really only talking about the window damage itself, and there's nothing else other than the floors, right? The floors are wet. So we're talking about the windows, water comes in through the windows, maybe it goes down the little bit of drywall into the floors and wrecks the floors. They're going to argue that the windows were not properly installed. They're going to argue that there's wear and tear because the seal, whether that be some type of caulk that is being used, had been compromised over the years. That's what caused the water to come in. All right. Again, this is going to be the scenario where, yes, possibly from a hurricane or a storm, tropical storm or tornado, but this bucket is where you really don't have any other damage to your house. Now let's take a look at bucket number 2, okay? However, if your home did have significant wind damage and your roof was badly damaged and you have leaks and your soffits, more than likely the window won't even be an issue because there's significant damage to then turn to, and there's a lot of different tests when it comes to window damage and leaks that can be done when you're talking about a hurricane. So as we talked about number one, the bucket number three coincides with bucket number one, which is if it's only the windows, they might just cover the water intrusion, depends on the language of the policy, but not actually the window itself. Again, coming back to the very first little graphic here, it's tricky. So depending on the insurance company, depending on the policy, depending the circumstances, right? A storm, tropical storm, hurricane, all this needs to be taken in consideration. Please don't forget, hit that like button, the thumbs up button on this video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this. So let's continue with this, is it covered by insurance part. So if we're talking about cracks outside the home and nothing to do with the windows, okay, the windows are out, windows are fine, you have examined. So now we're talking about cracks in the stucco, cracks in bricks, somewhere in the exterior that's probably, if it's not the windows, where it's coming from. So it's unlikely to be covered because this is going to be considered settling. Your house is settling. That isn't covered underneath your homeowner's policy. So one test you can do, if you go outside your home, if you identify where some cracks are at in the general area, you can remove that drywall and then spray that area with a hose, and you should see water coming in. So an important, well, over the last few days, some of the calls I've been getting, it's important to do an analysis. And some of the calls I've been getting, I think people are forgetting to take in consideration the hurricane deductible and what the total cost is, and if it's even worth filing the claim. So if you are dealing with these situations and you have a hurricane, the deductible is going to be much higher, whatever your deductible, hurricane deductible is. So you have to take that into consideration after you find out what the total cost of your damages are going to be. So if it's not a hurricane, obviously the deductible will be less. Does that make it any easier to claim? No, it could make it more difficult because if it's a window, there's going to be questions as to whether or not the storm could have done it if it's not a hurricane. The other thing is, if you're only dealing with one room, one window, some floors in that particular room, depending on your hurricane deductible, most people, it is between $4,000 and $10,000 on a 2% deductible here in Florida. So between $4,000 and $10,000. One room, if you have a few hundred square feet of flooring to fix that window, I mean, it shouldn't be more than $5,000 for all that. So if it's more than one room, so then in this scenario, it wouldn't be worth filing the claim. So if it's more than one room, you need to get the costs. Anything under $10,000 is probably not going to be worth filing a claim. If it's a hurricane claim and you have a deductible that's $8,000 or more, I would only want to see you file a claim as if your damages are $20,000 in total or greater. Yeah, that's a lot. So obviously if you have a roof and siding or gutters and inside of the home's damage and the windows, it all makes it worth it. But if we're right back to this scenario, one room, one window, maybe two rooms, just find out what the total cost is. And if you have a deductible between $4,000 and $10,000, you should not be filing the claim if it's under $15,000. That's my opinion. That would be my recommendation. Briefly do an overview here as we conclude this video. So number one, you really want to find out what is causing the leak. As I mentioned, if you're dealing with wet floors, it's coming from window more than likely, or it's coming from cracks on the outside of the house. The third possibility is your roof, but if you don't see any type of water stains on the ceiling, that's probably not it. You want to evaluate the cost of the damages of your repairs versus the deductible if you're dealing with a hurricane. All right. A storm, while that is a much lower deductible, you're also going to have a more difficult time proving that that storm caused those damages to that window. And finally, if the damages do not exceed $10,000 after your deductible, it doesn't make sense to file the claim, in my opinion. My name is Mike Keeler. I'm a licensed public adjuster here in the state of Florida. If you have questions, need help with a claim, I'm always available. You can call me, text me, or shoot me an email. Thank you.